watching Fox Nation as they take a lunch recess. You just heard from the judge there. They will be coming back at about 1:45, so this is about 1 hour from now. So we're just going to kind of try to break down what we have been watching and listening to, more testimony, more witnesses, and cross-exam from Amber Heard's attorney. But of course, you've been watching the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial in this $50 million defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard, brought on by Johnny Depp. Of course, she is countersuing as well. I have on set with me two attorneys that are going to sort of walk us through everything we've been listening to. Angela Cenedella, she's an attorney and also TikTok's premier legal voice, by the way. And Vinoo Varghese. Did I get that right?
Close, Vinoo.
Vinoo Varghese. And, well, Vin, I was thinking like vino, but then I was thinking wine, and then that's where it all went down south. White-collar federal criminal defense attorney, also a former prosecutor. Thank you both for talking to us. This most recent witness that they had on the camera there was a police officer with the L.A. County Sheriff's Department, the police department there. She was talking about a call that was made in, a domestic violent call, and the question that I thought was interesting that the attorney was raising to her is that no charges were filed, no domestic charges were filed. The question then is, if a police officer, and I'll ask you first, Angela, if a police officer gets a call that there has been an incident of domestic violence, but yet she doesn't see any evidence, there are no bruises, there are no scrapes, there are no physical, obvious signs that there has been some sort of physical altercation, and no charges are filed, do they just walk away? Or do they pursue charges?
They can walk away, but what I think is most relevant here is that even if this didn't happen in a legal standpoint, even if there were no charges filed, does not mean the abuse didn't happen, which I think is so relevant to this case and why I still believe, I will always believe, that up until this point, Amber is not going to win. I'm sorry, that Amber's going to win, that Johnny's not going to win.
Okay, but Vinoo, what do you think? Because at this point, up until yesterday, we had not heard one single witness that actually could say that they were an eyewitness to any kind of domestic violence, that they ever saw Johnny Depp lay a hand on her. And as you know, in her testimony yesterday, she talked about, and this is the very first time that we actually heard of a witness, she talked about the fact that she, her sister, Amber's sister, witnessed Johnny Depp grab Amber by the hair with one hand and hit her in the face with the other. This is the very first time that anyone has come forward to testify. This was damning evidence. This was a damning testimony against Johnny Depp.
Well, I will say that obviously the witness's testimony is biased by its nature, right?
And I'm going to get into that for a second because, of course, a sister is about as close as you can get.
Right. But to get back to your question about the police and the assault, I actually respectfully disagree with my colleague here. That doesn't mean that something happened. In fact, there are tons of false allegations in this situation. When the cops respond, and I'm a former state prosecutor, I was an assistant district attorney in Brooklyn for 6 years, they have to arrest regardless of what they see if there's any allegation of violence. Now, a lot of times it's correct. They're responding to things that aren't violent in nature, so they're not going to make an arrest there, and they will issue what's called a domestic incident report, like the officer was saying. Now, she tried to tout herself right in the beginning as an expert, saying that she knows more about this stuff. That's just a designation, DVPO, Domestic Violence Police Officer. It doesn't really mean that she's more qualified than anyone else. So in this situation, what the defense or Amber Heard is trying to do is saying because some police were called, that something happened. But that's just not the case overwhelmingly in these situations.
In these situations, though, it is very difficult. The police officers do have to sit there and listen to both sides and actually be the judge and jury in that moment, because at that point...
they're required, if there's violence, they are mandated all across the country to make an arrest. Right,
but what if there's no evidence and it's a he said, she said situation?
As long as the call is made. They have to arrest. They don't have discretion. The discretion then lies with the district attorney's office or the state's attorney's office in each county.
So then why wasn't there an arrest made in this case?
It's a great question.
I mean, so are you saying that the sheriff broke protocol?
It's possible.
The police screwed up. Are you saying that the police made a mistake?
But I think in this situation, they have a situation here, they have a situation here that it's complicated. Maybe they said, you know what, there seems to be no evidence, and these are celebrities. Maybe we don't want to get in the middle of all of this.
You're nodding your head, but here's the thing, and I'm nodding my head too, and the reason why is that I can name numerous cases of domestic violence that are public cases where there was a phone call made, not necessarily by the assailant or by the victim, but a phone call made, such as in the Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case, when those sheriffs were called out because they saw this couple screaming and yelling, and they saw Gabby Petito crying and Brian Laundrie pulling her into his car, and they saw a physical altercation. They actually saw a physical altercation. They were pulled over. Brian Laundrie actually did have scratches on him, and they made it at that point look as if he was the victim and that she was the aggressor, and they let them go. All they did was have them go and sleep in separate hotel rooms that night, and that was it. 24-hour timeout and you're back on the road. He ended up murdering her. So these are the kinds of cases that are so touchy when police work on the ground is not done properly.
Julie, I agree so much. I think ultimately resources are always limited, and as a result, it's up to the discretion of the police officer.
Right.
Even if legally it's not supposed to be, it always is.
Yeah, and you're not.
I'm actually shaking my head. It's not up to the discretion of the police officer. Almost all of these cases are going to result in arrest, and then it's it's up to the district attorney's office.
That's the way it should go down.
No, it's how it goes down. It's how it goes down most of the time.
That way, but it doesn't always.
I have a little bit of there's a distinction in the Gabby Petito case, which I covered for your network.
Yes, of course.
In that situation, they came across and they had to investigate. She wasn't injured.
Right.
And so
he was, though. Why didn't they arrest her?
Well, they didn't have to at the moment, right? And that actually goes to the point.
Because a lot of people say, had they arrested her, she'd still be alive.
They tend not to arrest men in these. I'm sorry,
well,
tend not to arrest women in
situations. You're right.
In these situations.
You're right. There is a biased gender.
Right. So men are overwhelmingly the ones that get arrested when things go on, and as long as the woman makes the claim, the man is overwhelmingly or statistically more likely to get arrested if it's what's called a cross claim. But in this situation, I think they knew. They probably called their higher ups and said, let's not get in the middle of this because there appears to be no evidence that Amber Heard was injured.
I think that's the question, though, of evidence. I mean, her face was red. There were all these things that are obviously up to questions, up to the discretion of the police officer to see whether or not those injuries were definite. And so at that point, the police officer has to make the decision.
Do you think? I mean, what do you think of the gender bias, though? Because I mean, we've been hearing a lot in this court trial about how there you go, right there. Look at these pictures. There's a bruise on her cheek. There's a bruise on his cheek. We know that she has hit him because she's admitted the fact that she didn't do a direct blow, but that she did make contact. And there's audio recordings of her hitting him. But we don't have any evidence other than a picture of a bruise and her sister saying that she saw the violence. I mean, there's no other evidence in that. Is that enough to hold up in court and actually find Johnny Depp guilty of domestic violence, do you believe?
Well, that's actually not what we're deciding here. It's not whether or not he's guilty of domestic violence.
Right.
It's whether or not...
It's the defamation suit, of course.
Right, and the standard of proof there is totally different. The burden of proof is entirely on Johnny at this point to say that under no circumstance could she have thought she was a victim of abuse. So as a result, we're not actually deciding whether or not those bruises are real.
And that's the question that I want to ask, because now you hear Amber Heard's attorney asking a lot of questions about the domestic abuse. So they are actually steering this in that direction. Why are they doing that? Because they are trying to influence the jury, are they not? By trying to show the jury that she had every right to write that op-ed, right? Because she was a victim of domestic violence. They also brought up the questioning about the fact that how hard is it for a woman who is a victim of domestic violence to speak up? And what are the ramifications of that? And would it prevent her from speaking up? And so why would she wait until an op-ed? I think that's what they're trying to do here, is sort of lay down the background of why she waited until an op-ed to sort of spill the beans, but yet she never mentioned him in that op-ed, and now we're at this defamation lawsuit because it basically cost him his career.
Well, I don't think that the timeline for her is not necessarily problematic for her. And in terms of actually writing an op-ed, she has the right to do that. And that's her claim here, right? That she's exercising free speech and that she didn't, name him. But the issue of the domestic violence is here because it's ugly, it's sordid, right? It's something that is going to potentially turn the jury against him. And so she's there, and the reality is her word alone is enough. In a criminal case, the testimony of an alleged victim, even if there's no other witnesses, that can be enough to lead to a conviction. And in a civil case, it's a smaller standard of proof. So while they're technically not deciding whether he assaulted her, the reality is that's what's underpinning this whole case. Because if they established that he did, or it was more likely than not, even if they're not instructed on that, that he did do this, then she prevails, at least against his suit.
Okay, so we have to establish domestic violence occurred in this courtroom in order for them to say then she is not guilty of defamation. She had every right as a victim to speak up. So the domestic violence has a very big part in establishing whether or not she defamed him. If there was no domestic violence and she's the one that's lying, then yes, she defamed him. She wrote an op-ed that stated that she was a victim of domestic violence, essentially pointing the finger at Johnny Depp, which then cost him tens of millions of dollars in lost jobs. And that's what he's suing for, the lost wages.
Yes, but to be clear, we have to establish that there was the possibility that domestic violence occurred, and that is why the burden of proof lies so firmly in his side. We're not sending anyone to jail, and in that case, the burden of proof is much higher. It's just, could it be possible that this happened? Is it likely it could have happened? So whether or not you believe one of them, if you just decide, I don't believe either of them, I don't know who's telling the truth, then Johnny has to lose because it's a civil case.
I want to play some sound from Whitney Enriquez. She is Amber Heard's sister. She is the one that finally came forward with the very first testimony that shows that somebody actually witnessed abuse between the two. She once originally spoke about them having a very loving relationship, that Amber Heard was mad over Johnny Depp, madly in love over him, and that clearly went south after about 1 year of their marriage. So let's play Whitney Enriquez, and she's basically being questioned on the relationship between her sister and Johnny Depp. Watch.
At some point, then Amber is on the mezzanine level of PH 5. So she is, it's kind of hard to explain. So the kitchen's down here and the mezzanine's up here. So she's there, it's her little office nook, and she starts shouting at him, saying, you know,
objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, Your Honor. She's screaming expletives at him. I mean, that's not offered to prove the truth.
Overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
They're saying horrible things to one another. Fuck you, you know, he's calling her a fucking whore, fucking cunt, used up trash bag, you know, whatever. They were saying horrible things to one another. She was calling him old and fat. It was a fight. They were saying really nasty things to one another. I leave them in the kitchen to go up the stairs, was trying to calm Amber down, hopefully get her back into my apartment, and Debbie had come up with me.
And Debbie, who's Debbie?
Debbie was his nurse at the time.
Debbie Lloyd?
Yes, I believe that was her name.
Okay.
So we're with Amber on the mezzanine level.
I'm sorry, just so we know who where is. Is it you and Debbie that are with Amber, or is it...
Yes, Debbie, Amber, and I are all in the little mezzanine area. And as I mentioned, the mezzanine overlooks the kitchen and the living room. So Johnny then hurls a Red Bull can and it hits Debbie in the back. She didn't even react. She didn't really seem to notice. But I'm standing up there talking, I'm at the top of the stairs with my back to the stairs. And that's when Johnny runs up the stairs. And again, I'm facing Amber. He comes up behind me, strikes me in the back, kind of just somewhere over here. He strikes me in the back. I hear Amber shout, "Don't hit my fucking sister." She smacks him, lands one, and then he grabs, at that point, that's when Travis runs up the stairs after Amber landed one. But by that time, Johnny had already grabbed Amber by the hair with one hand and was whacking her repeatedly in the face with the other as I was standing there. Travis pulls them apart. I get Amber into mine. I close the doors behind me and lock them. I then hear Johnny's voice shouting,
Never mind, withdraw. Okay, sorry.
I hear Johnny's voice shouting, I fucking hate you. I hate you both, you fucking cunts, you fucking whores. And I hear crashing. I hear crashing and banging and smashing, and he starts screaming like an animal. And I then just moved Amber into the next room, and I just kept her there all night. The next day, I go and I see her closet has been completely destroyed. Racks were overturned. Yeah, one of the clothing racks had been like tossed down the stairs. There was art off the wall. And down in the kitchen, there was broken glass. Like, the place was destroyed.
Okay, so there obviously is testimony from Amber Heard's sister showing a volatile situation between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is an understatement. The question now is, how much, I guess, impact will her testimony, being the very first witness that actually saw the abuse, the physical abuse between Johnny Depp as Amber Heard, the victim, how much will that impact this defamation case? We have our attorneys here again. Angela, listening to her sister right there talk about the way that Johnny Depp referred to both of them, cursing, calling them names, we all know that he had a temper and that he has a temper. We've heard from his former business manager. We've heard from his former agent. We've heard from many people that have had dealings with him that have been on the other end, on the receiving end of his temper. So we know that he's got a temper. But up until this point, we've never heard that that temper led to violence. What do we make of this testimony?
I find it extremely relevant. I found it very powerful. She seemed like an extremely credible witness. And at this point, the jury will be looking at her and wondering whether or not they believe her. It's truly up to whether or not they find her to be credible. I found her to be so, which gives me doubt to his story about the defamation, which leads me to believe that she would win.
Vinoo, up until this point, I mean, Amber Heard needed this kind of testimony because a lot of people watching Amber Heard and her body language when she is being questioned by both attorneys, it's questionable. I mean, she doesn't come across as super credible in her body language. I'm just talking about body language alone. But a lot of times, she just stops and starts, and a lot of times her eye contact is not consistent. She looks away a lot. Those are the sort of things that a lot of people, including jurors, are going to look at as far as whether they believe this woman, whether they find her to be credible. She comes across as cold often. Oftentimes she starts crying at really inopportune times that almost seems ingenuine, to the point where people that are sitting in the courtroom start laughing during these moments. So it's even, the spectators that are actually doubting her story at times. So how is her sister, do you think, going to help her make her case?
Well, I think just watching the clip that you just showed, she seemed believable.
Yes.
And it seemed like a plausible scenario based upon the evidence and what you just said about Johnny Depp's temper. The question is, will the jurors care? And if Amber Heard has been if it, in fact, that Amber Heard has turned off the jury, which she may well have, right? Because we were talking backstage about her looking at the jurors all the time when she answers questions.
It's like she's on stage a lot of times. Right. I mean, it seems staged.
And it seems to me that her lawyers, who've been criticized a lot during this trial, did not prepare her well for her testimony.
I would agree.
So one of the things that I know, when I'm a criminal defense attorney, I'm a former prosecutor.
Right.
I used to train cops on how to testify.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that you tell them was, when you being asked a question, look at the questioner, look at the judge, but when you answer, look at the jury. That doesn't work necessarily with a civilian witness. The civilian witness at that point can look staged.
Right.
And so when you're there, and the FBI is trained in this particularly, they actually receive training in how to testify. FBI agents are generally given a pass by jurors, but her as a civil litigant likely won't be. So her sister's testimony, as individually seems credible, may not help her in the long run.
When the sister is giving her testimony, she's looking right at whoever it is that's asking the questions. Right. But on the right-hand side of your screen, you see Amber. Every time she answers, she looks over to her right and then comes back to the microphone. Is she looking at the jury when she does that?
Yes.
Okay, so and I've never seen somebody look at the jury every single time they answer a question.
Cops do.
Here's the microphone. The cops do. But the microphone is here. The lawyer is directly in front of you. The jury's over here. And she leans over, looks at them, and comes back. And that goes on every question, which to me, I don't know. I mean, what do you make of her delivery in the way that she's constantly looking at the jury with every one of her answers?
I don't doubt her credibility off of that alone.
That doesn't bother you? If you were defending her, would that make you cringe a little bit?
It might make me cringe, but it doesn't make me attack her credibility. I feel that she's been unfairly attacked for that just by virtue of looking at the jury a lot. That to me is not dispositive of anything whatsoever. Yeah. I do think, though, when you look at her testimony and you see how after her, they placed all of these people first in her camp and then in his camp, who then created this journey of understanding that confirming and buttressing her statements, I feel taken in totality, it does come off as pretty strong. So we saw her makeup artist testifying yesterday that she saw the swollen lips, she saw the nose, that she has touched Amber's face 100 times and knows exactly what it's supposed to look like. And then we see Whitney, her sister, as you just showed, saying in person how she saw that happen. So when you have a witness who could possibly not be entirely credible, after that you follow them with people who buttress them. And I think her side has done that spectacularly.
No, so I want to get to the makeup artist in just a moment, because I'm going to play a clip of part of yesterday when she was testifying about seeing the bruises on her face. There are other people that also saw Amber around that same time, such as the doorman, the guy that worked at the front desk of the building of the penthouse where police were called and where somebody was working out at a gym nearby and heard a scuffle, and the front desk guy went to go check it out. He looked in the cameras. He saw Johnny Depp pacing in a hallway. He turned off the camera. But when they asked the front desk man if he ever noticed any bruises on her face, he simply said, I didn't really look that close. I wasn't looking for any bruises and scrapes and scratches, but I did not see any. And then, of course, it was just this long questionnaire, which I found to be absolutely absurd. If you noticed there was concealer and if there was any foundation, to which I was kind of laughing too, because if you asked my husband if I'm wearing foundation, he'd be like, what the hell is foundation? And then the guy goes, well, I don't even notice if her eyelashes are crooked. I mean, it got so ridiculous. Then he started vaping and driving off. I'm sorry, but it was so good. I spent quite a bit of time watching that for entertainment purposes. But nonetheless, that is another person that was in the same vicinity as Amber Heard, had seen her around the alleged time that this happened, and did not see anything on her face. Now, is he studying her face as closely as the makeup artist? No, he is not. And here's her testimony.
I came to the penthouse on December 16 to do Amber's makeup. She had injuries. She had too light, like, I don't know how, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a medical expert, I don't know how I would describe them, but it could have looked like somebody had headbutted her lightly, so she had a discoloration here, under both eyes, and on the bridge of the nose. And she had what I would call a split lip, or something on the lip, like a gash or a split lip.
Ms. Iglesias, could you please describe what you did by way of makeup to prepare Amber Heard for the James Corden show on December 16, 2015?
Yes, we covered, you know, I just did makeup, but just a little heavier where it needed. So we covered, you know, the discoloration, the bruises, with a little slightly heavier concealer, one that has a little more of a peach undertone, which I would normally don't use on Amber, but peach do cancel blue. So I did that under the eyes, and although Amber always, you know, has a red lip, is one of the signature look, I remember clearly talking that we had no other option that night but then to use a red blood, like a really red lipstick to, you know, make sure we could cover up the injuries on the lip.
And were you able to cover all of the injuries with the makeup that you applied and as you just described?
Yes.
Ms. Iglesias, if you could look at what has been marked as exhibit number 22, do you recognize Amber Heard in that picture?
Yes.
Okay. And is this the picture of her, is this a picture of her that evening, December 16, 2015 on the James Corden show?
Yes.
What, if anything, did you observe on the difference in Amber Heard's demeanor before the show and then on the show?
That she had the ability to, you know, turn it on, that she, you know, the ability to do her job and perform how she was supposed to perform on the show.
And prior to Amber going on the show and while you were working with her on her makeup, how would you describe Amber's mood and demeanor?
Angry, sad, a little erratic, I think through waves of emotions, you know.
So there is the makeup artist who is talking about how she did cover bruises on Amber Heard's body, on her face when she was doing her makeup. She actually detailed a cut or a split in her lip being one of the injuries, and that she was able or managed to cover that up with red lipstick. You're nodding your head again, or shall I call it shaking your head?
I'm shaking my head.
What are you thinking?
The response to that is, where are the photos? She admitted yesterday that she never took photos of these supposedly these terrible injuries. So why didn't this woman take a photo of her? I mean, it leads you to believe that this probably didn't happen. And this makeup artist may be getting paid on the side to support her. I mean, because where are the photos of this? That's pretty serious stuff. Split lip. This is Amber Heard.
But is it the makeup artist's job to take pictures of
well, not her,
abuse?
but Amber Heard.
Right.
In this situation.
Well, Amber Heard does have pictures of bruises on her cheek, but on this particular day when she was doing her makeup.
She told Varghese yesterday that she didn't take pictures.
Any pictures that day when she was getting her makeup art. And of course, the makeup artist has no right to be taking pictures of her face because it's none of her business. My makeup artists take pictures of my face, but that's only after they've done my makeup in order to show their work, but not before. Well, I mean, I guess we take before pictures too, but that's not for the proof of showing physical violence.
This is a situation where they're saying something happened, right? And so yesterday, she got her, the attorney who's now become, quite popular on social media, is like, she had got her to admit that all these terrible things, like the bloodied pillows and things like that, there's no pictures of any of this stuff.
Angela?
Well, there are pictures of her face from the night before. So if you're saying that there has to be a picture of the morning of, right before she applies makeup, in order for her to be believable,
that's not what I'm saying.
I just can't
there's
stomach
a lack
that.
of pictures in this case.
I just don't think that just because there's not an immediate picture means that this abuse doesn't happen. Also, I feel like Amber's been vilified for taking pictures of herself in other occasions. There's also been critiques that say, well, look, just because she took pictures, she must have made that up and taken pictures and just put the makeup on herself and created fake bruises.
What do you say about some of the accusations that some of the bruises are inconsistent in some of these pictures?
I think the angles, the lighting, I believe that. I don't think you're going to see the exact same pictures, the exact same angles in any situation. I know that from taking selfies myself. That said, I'm not even certain I 100% believe Amber, but I'm going to say that I have enough doubt of whether or not, of his side, to say that this completely could not have happened.
Would the prosecution ever argue that perhaps the makeup artist had something to do with perhaps making her look like she had bruises?
I mean, his plaintiff's attorneys in this case, I would certainly, raise that.
Because that hasn't been brought up.
Yeah, I'd raise that specter.
If I was the prosecutor, I would say, well, this makeup artist seems to be pretty convinced that you had bruises on the face, yet she didn't take any pictures. Is she capable of actually drawing pictures? I mean, drawing or painting on what could appear to be bruises on the face?
She's a makeup artist, right? And
that makeup artists are actually trained to do that, when they work in cinema, to be able to paint on or make a face look as if it has been bruised or a black eye. All of that can be done by makeup.
Okay, but if you are...
And I'm not speculating here. Yes. I'm just saying, I'm speaking on behalf of the prosecution. That is a claim that they could make.
Agreed. But if he's going to go so far as to say that she probably was or could have been paid on the side, then you have to say that about all of Johnny's witnesses too.
Right.
His doormen, his security guard, they could have been just all paid on the side.
Well, and getting paid on the side, first of all, that's sloppy. That is very easily traceable. So I am not going to believe that she's being paid on the side. I'm just saying, I think that that's something that anybody can dig up. That is so easy to get. That can be found. That's in discovery. That can be discovered.
I'm just saying if it's cash payments. I'm not saying she was or wasn't. All I'm saying is that that's a conclusion that can be drawn. And even if the lawyers don't exactly say that, you can say something to the jury like, she's Amber Heard's makeup artist. I wonder what benefit she's receiving. Just put that out there.
Yeah.
And if the jury is already not liking Amber Heard, they're going to disregard her testimony. And so far, Amber Heard has not presented someone who's likable. And really, this is about emotion. So your points about Johnny Depp's witnesses, you can say the same thing about Johnny Depp's witnesses, that Amber Heard was buttressed by all these credible witnesses. Juries make emotional decisions. So if they don't like her, they're not going to rule in her favor.
Do you remember a few days ago they were showing some testimony from back during the divorce, 2019, correct? That was when they divorced, 2019, is that when they divorced? They showed some old video of her being questioned by lawyers, Amber Heard, back then. Okay, so a younger Amber Heard. And she kind of slipped up when it came to notifying TMZ. Do you remember this part? Where she's being questioned about the night of this incident where cops were called to the penthouse, and she ultimately, when she went to go file divorce, this is the story. So she went into a courthouse to go file divorce papers. She wanted to file divorce as discreetly as possible, yet she brought her publicist with her. Okay, so that's number one, question number one. And number two, she wanted a friend or a lawyer to call Johnny to let him know that she was filing divorce papers because she didn't want him to find out through TMZ, and then she did this. And then she did this, and she kind of played with her hair because they then questioned, did you notify TMZ? I mean, is that what this is, that you've been recording him all this time, and then you filed papers discreetly, but yet somehow TMZ knew about it, and you had your publicist on hand? There are those kind of situations that casts doubt on Amber Heard.
And then she did, though, follow up, I believe, in testimony on trial here that it was allegedly Laura Wasser, his divorce attorney, who had leaked it to TMZ. So
right.
I'm not exactly sure what to believe.
Mm-hmm. And also the fact that Johnny Depp has come out repeatedly and pointed out the fact that she's illegally recording him and illegally taping hours of conversation. I mean, it's amazing when they go to bring up clips, they're like, okay, hour 2, minutes 34. I mean, these are hours and hours of how much of that is going to play into maybe perhaps sympathy within the jurors, among the jurors for Johnny Depp. Do you think that they're going to see this as he was entrapped? Do they see this entrapment? Does this influence the jury one way or the other, do you think?
I don't think the tapes help him. I mean, I think the argument, that's pretty much the only argument they have, is that this was, illegally done or not properly done. I'm not sure that carries much water. So it really will come down again to who these jurors like, right? And so if they like him, they're going to disregard what's on it. If they like her, then it's going to be important. It's going to be in her favor.
In all seriousness, domestic violence, in a case like this, and I know that we're not trying Johnny Depp for domestic violence, but it is really sad that it comes down to jurors liking one or the other, because oftentimes women are misconstrued as, I can't say the B word, I don't think. I would love to, but you know what I'm talking about. It's happened to me. If you don't smile enough, if you are cold, if you are stoic, you're considered that person, that word. And I've been called much worse. People a lot of times call me out for not smiling enough. It's just stupid stuff that men do not have to deal with. And so do you think that's unfair for Amber Heard to be sort of pigeonholed as sort of this cold B.I., you know the rest, for her sort of presence when she's being questioned?
I think so. I think that the scrutiny against her for her testimony has been significant.
Yeah.
And sure, maybe I don't like her as a witness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't believe every single thing she said. Again, in order for him to win his case, we have to believe that everything she said was a lie. And that is very hard to do.
Yeah, that is true. And it's very hard to disprove as well. I mean, it's very hard to prove that everything she's saying is a lie.
I'm going to brush back on you just a little bit about your comments about how the situation. The reality is it's overwhelming amount of men who are arrested in domestic violence cases.
You are correct.
It is, so 70% of my practice is white-collar practice, fraud work. The other 30% is representing men who get charged with these kind of things.
Right.
And in 99% of the clients I represent in that percentage, it is a false allegation. It is a woman who is trying to get an advantage in divorce. You have no idea how many different divorce attorneys I work with, in these situations.
I believe it.
So, while there may be some perceptions that you raise that are correct, and Angela here agrees with, and I would agree with the number of these comments. Right. The problem is when you look at it, you have what's maybe happening here, as the New York Times in its op-ed, an op-ed writer wrote yesterday, is that maybe this is the end of Me Too, right? That Me Too has gone too far, and that Amber Heard is Exhibit A for what's wrong with the Me Too movement. And who knows? We'll know at the end of this month what happens.
She has actually delivered blows to his face, and that she has hit him. So, as far as domestic violence is concerned, we know that it was certainly coming from her, and we see evidence of bruising and the sister's testimony that he did it to her. but she's actually admitted that she's hit him.
Yes.
She's hit him. He's never admitted that he laid a hand on her.
But I think the sister's testimony is especially relevant to why she hit him, because in her testimony, she said she did so in defense of her sister. And her sister is saying there that, yes, it was definitely in defense of her. So that really changes it as to whether or not she truly was the abuser or whether or not he was.
But in audio recordings, even when the sister wasn't around, you can hear Amber saying, yeah, I hit you. You know, she admits in audio recordings that she actually hit him.
But it's for self-defense. She's never saying, I just hit him out of the blue. It's out of self-defense for her sister or for herself.
Right. So, I mean, it really comes down to he said, she said. It's going to come down to whether the jury finds her story more believable or his story more believable. Is he more likable and is she more likable? And when you see the videos of Johnny Depp arriving and leaving that courthouse, who do you think the public's whose side do you think the public is on? Johnny Depp. I mean, it's sad to say, but I mean, it is true that she gets booed and he gets cheers. Why is that, you think?
Well, I also think that's why today's testimony was so relevant and interesting, because we saw people that used to be in Johnny Depp's intimate inner circle come out and speak negatively of his character.
About how his character. So he was late to movies. His agent had to fly to Australia twice because he was constantly late, never on set on time. They had to feed him his lines in his ear because he was most likely intoxicated. He would go through periods, but more periods than not, of being intoxicated or on drugs, and he would make his crew wait for hours. So his reputation obviously was going down before this op-ed came out. But was that reputation bad enough to end his career? That's the question. And is Amber Heard guilty of ending his career? That's the question for the jurors.
Well, I think in this situation, what you just mentioned about Amber Heard being booed, I'm not sure what the exact, how they're kicking these jurors out.
Yeah.
But if they're seeing any of this, and here's the other thing I can tell you, they're instructed every day. Make sure you don't read anything about this. Make sure you don't do anything.
Of course. I mean,
they
during
all
every recess.
They
you
all
can't
are.
prevent them from doing that.
They all are.
Exactly.
So if they know that what's going on, that actually may work in Amber Heard's favor, in that they may begin to feel sorry for her. If you look at him in his testimony, he was credited generally for testifying pretty well and mocking the lawyers, where you were drinking excessively. Will, were you there? It was pretty, I mean, they didn't do a good job at that point.
A pint of wine.
They didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
And that may ultimately, possibly, turn things in her favor, because they're like, wow, she's a victim here and she's not being treated right. It's possible that happens. I mean, at this point, it's hard for me to say which way or another. I wouldn't go as strong as Angela here and say that she's going to win, but it's possible.
So yesterday we heard from Amber Heard's sister. She was the one that came forward with the very first time saying that she actually witnessed physical abuse. So then this morning, one of Johnny Depp's friends came on. Now, he would be considered a witness in the sense that he didn't actually see any physical violence, but he was called to the apartment, to the penthouse, moments after their argument that, sparked word of possible domestic violence. He says that after being called during the argument, did he see anything? He says yes. What did he see? Let's find out. This is his testimony.
So I think your prior testimony was that you've not observed arguments between Mr. Depp and Amber. Is that correct, or is that wrong?
I've never seen them physically abuse each other. No.
And did you say this was at 3 in the morning when he called?
It was late. I can't exactly, but it was later than I imagined that I'd get a call. So I thought it was, something bad. So yeah, I went down.
So Stephen called at around 3 in the morning, and then you went down, and your understanding, you went down after that call?
Yeah.
And what was your understanding of the reason you were called?
Yeah, that it was just crazy arguing and stuff going on down there, and for some reason he thought I could help.
What was crazy about it?
Right, I mean, I think what was crazy to me is that's the first time that ever happened. The first time Stephen ever called me for help like that. Usually it's just to come and record or go do this or go do that, but for some reason he wanted me to come.
And when Steve had called you, did he make any references to anything being thrown around?
That I don't remember. It was almost like, shit's going crazy down here, can you come?
Did he say that he wanted you to come urgently?
Yes.
How long did it take you to get there?
My house downtown at 3 in the morning, maybe 20 minutes.
Did you ever talk to Amber when you went over that morning?
Not really. There was just a lot of walking around and people going in and out of the bedroom. And, I don't remember if people were crying. I don't remember any of that stuff. It was just like a blur to me. I don't remember if I talked to her. I'm sure I probably said everything's gonna be all right. But, by the time I got there, you can tell there was a vibe in the house, but there's nothing I could witness.
What was the vibe in the house?
Yeah, just people, a little bit of an edge, And look, I got called down there at 3 in the morning, and there's the mom up. I mean, it was obviously, to me, something went down, but I didn't see anything.
Okay, so there you have, what's his name? Bruce Witkin. He is a friend of Johnny Depp. He was called to the home during an argument, and he also happened to be in the band, in Johnny Depp's band. He also was the husband of Johnny Depp's ex-wife. My God, could this get any more convoluted? You got all of that? And thank you, Angela, for pointing out the fact that there was actually a familial tie here, which also sort of ties into the whole, when you have family members, former family members, ex-family members testifying, there is a little bit of, you got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because you have to understand that there is a bit of a bias there. But what did you make of his testimony? He was actually called during an argument. So that is an eyewitness. That's considered an eyewitness.
Yes, he doesn't necessarily testify to having actually seen any violence, so that doesn't help her. But what I do think is helpful is he does talk a lot about the substance abuse and how crazy it was. The reason why that's super relevant is because we've all heard about how Johnny Depp turned into a monster when he was abusing drugs, and as a result was unable to even remember large parts of his life.
Yeah, well, and that's why they had to feed him his lines in his ear, because I believe that was sort of an issue that happened toward the latter part of his career. But the question now is, does he get his career back? I mean, that's what we're waiting to find out. Will we ever see Johnny Depp on the big screen ever again? At this point, we still don't know.
Well, before I get to that, I look at watching this guy. I would think the opposite of what monster Johnny, because this guy is so stoned and he's so out of it that you're like, wow. It's the opposite of a violent person, because you're looking at him. I couldn't understand what this guy who looks like Kramer from Seinfeld was actually saying. I literally could not make out most of his testimony.
I have to say this, and I think this is very odd. Now, first of all, drug users usually surround themselves around drug users, okay? Amber Heard was no innocent person. She, of course, dabbled in substance. We don't know if she abused, but she was definitely not sober all the time. Let's just put it that way. And Johnny Depp doesn't necessarily surround himself around a bunch of sober people, okay? So drunks and drug addicts, they tend to hang out together. How is it that all these people that were allegedly also abusing have such perfectly clear memories? Because I got to be honest with you, after a few glasses of wine, I black out. I don't know a thing. And so somehow they know what happened or occurred 5 years ago, and they were under substances themselves. How is it that they have such clear memories?
That's a great question. I do think that the lawyers did a tremendous job of asking how much this witness also abused drugs. And this man really said it was more recreational. He barely used it at all. And I found that testimony to be fascinating.
Yeah,
he barely used it at all? Come on.
I mean, he looks like he did more than recreational. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not sure who this guy helps,
I
to be honest with you.
I don't know who he helps either. But, what I don't think helped Johnny Depp, or actually Amber Heard rather, is when the sister talked about her relationship with Johnny Depp, because, we all have had a brother-in-law or a sister-in-law, most of us, in our lives. And, that relationship between a sister-in-law and her sister's husband is an interesting one. But I think sisters, first of all, number one, are overprotective. So for me, I'm always like guilty until proven innocent if you date my sister. She's now married, and I'm still learning to accept that. But, she had a really chummy relationship with Johnny Depp. And she actually had a very, jovial relationship with him. And in one instance, during her testimony, she actually joked about her sister getting hit with Johnny Depp, which that, I believe, leaves a few loopholes in her testimony and credibility. Let's watch.
Suspicions that Mr. Depp was allegedly hitting your sister by some point in 2013, right?
Suspicions.
And notwithstanding that, in June 2013, you were actually joking with Mr. Depp about hitting your sister, right?
Regrettably, over a text message, yes.
You were encouraging him to hit her?
I was not literally encouraging him to hit her.
But you were joking about it?
Regrettably, yes. Again, I did not have an understanding fully of what that was. I never would have said that now, knowing what I know.
But that was around the time that you allegedly became aware that he was,
I don't know.
There were injuries on your sister that caused you to have suspicions?
I don't know if it was around the same time.
Okay. If my sister was ever hit by her domestic partner, I would never joke about it. I certainly would not be texting the person who's allegedly abusing her. I would call the cops. That's what I would do. Whether my sister wanted to press charges or not, I would call the cops. No way in hell would I ever joke around about something like that. This is where I find major fault in her sister's testimony.
And I think that this could be the, as powerful as she seemed in the other clips that you had played earlier in this hour, this completely cuts against her credibility because it leads you to believe that there's really nothing going on based on what everybody and most people would think about a sibling. You want to protect your sibling, especially a sister, especially a female, so you're not going to be making comments about this unless you didn't think it was serious or not, or it was, unless you believe that nothing like this was actually going on. So that actually really hurts her and hurts her testimony. If I'm the Johnny Depp's lawyers, I'm playing that clip or reading from that transcript in closing statements.
Angela, would you agree?
Yes, I agree. It certainly doesn't make her look good, but I do think it just underscores how all of these witnesses and victims are 3D. They are humans. They're not just either binary, like great or bad, devil or angel. So I feel like it does hurt her, but contextually, will it actually sway the jury and have them discredit the entirety of her testimony? Maybe not.
What I can't understand is being a celebrity, okay, you've got security guards, you've got security cameras. There are cameras everywhere. In my home alone, and I am not a celebrity, we have at least 12 webcams. No, far from that. But I mean, we have at least 12 webcams. I've got them right here on my phone. I can check my garage, I can check my living room, my dining room. Every single room in our house has a camera, except for our bathrooms. In case you ever come over, don't worry about it. We won't be watching you in the shower. But with that said, Johnny Depp had to have had cameras. I don't understand how there was no video footage of any kind of abuse being under the hands of Johnny Depp. She recorded it all on her phone, but why isn't there any video surveillance showing that there is evidence of this?
I don't know, but I also
it doesn't make sense.
But I also think it's so
If
clear.
it was happening, don't you think she would have put webcams up? I mean, in all seriousness, if I was a victim of abuse and I was trying to claim that my husband was hitting me, I would absolutely set him up. I would put cameras up. I would hire somebody to put hidden cameras up. I mean, yes, it's illegal to videotape and put a hidden camera or a bug in a room, but you know what? She's already breaking the law by recording them on her cell phone. So why not go the extra step and put up the webcams? That I have an issue with as a prosecutor, and I'm only playing devil's advocate here, okay, as having, somewhat knowledge of the law. That is something that I would issue. Why didn't you bring up cameras instead of just audio? After the fact.
I think those are arguments that are going to be made by her lawyers. You would think they would make such arguments.
I haven't heard that argument yet.
And what Angela just said a few minutes ago is an argument that should be made by Amber Heard's lawyers in closing arguments. Because at that point, if this trial is a wash, in terms of who they believe, then closing arguments actually matter. In most cases, closing arguments, by the time you get to them, the
they've made their decision.
They've made their decision.
Yep.
So that's why, in my view, and I teach trial skills at Harvard Law School, I teach people the opening statement is the most important part of the trial because you have to set the stage.
First impression is everything.
But if the trial is like, the jurors literally don't know who to believe, then those closing arguments really matter.
So I think if the jury doesn't know who to believe here, though, with this fatigue, that he's just going to lose because, again, if there's doubt, he loses.
Is there doubt? Yes, there is. Is there doubt on both sides? Yes, there is. Do people doubt her? Yes. Do they doubt him? Yes. So now then where do you lie? So you basically have to say that beyond reasonable doubt.
Well, no, it's a lower standard here in a civil case. But
in a civil
what
case,
they could do,
but the jurors are going to want to be proven that she is lying 100%.
If it's a tie or close to a tie, the jury may come back. Either they're not going to make a decision, or they're going to come back, and they don't have to be unanimous here, unlike a criminal case. But they're going to come back and maybe give the decision to one person, but award almost nothing in damages. That could be the compromise verdict here.
I don't know. That's actually a pretty good prediction, that they might actually side with one but not award the other. What do you think?
I think that's possible, but I just don't see any way in how they could side with him, because again, if there is doubt, though, it goes to her. It's just not possible.
Well, that is true when it comes to domestic violent cases, as you just stated, that if a claim is made, it goes toward the person who's actually claiming that they are the victim of domestic violence.
I also think here we're discounting.
And again, we're not trying. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go on that too.
The jury instructions, they're going to go by the letter of the law and explain to them that it's about
paper
here.
They should.
Yes,
they're going to do whatever they feel like doing. They're going
to follow their gut. That's what jurors do.
These guys
human.
are not going to listen to jury instructions. They sleep during jury instructions. So it's up to the lawyers, particularly in closing statements, to remind them and how good they are at reminding them what the standard is. And then you may get one person who's like, you know what, I got to follow the law here. And then hopefully that person has enough strength within the jury room to rein everyone else in. But that's a lot of ifs on both sides.
Yes, but that's exactly my point, that if you were to go by the letter of the law, he is going to lose. So there's two axes here. There's like social media here where people say, oh, I like her, I like him, I believe him way more than her. But that is not the same as the legal standard here. And I think from a legal standpoint, it is so difficult, unless you're right, one rogue juror goes in there and just convinces everyone going against what the letter of the law is, that he should win.
Happens all the time.
So then what if he does lose? Okay, and she does win, but she doesn't get the money that she's now countering for.
Yes, that's what I believe will happen. I mean, I think she only filed the counterclaim to begin with to make her side stronger. It's not something she would have brought otherwise. So I don't think that she's necessarily going to win her countersuit, but I don't think that she's going to lose.
It's at this point, that's a pretty bold prediction. I think that it could be a situation where actually I think he wins, but because so much is ugly in this case, they're going to be like, maybe she defamed him, and then they're going to look at the fact that he's no longer in movies, right? He's no longer Captain Jack Sparrow. He's no longer Edward Scissorhands or every other role that he's been, in. So they may say, you know what, she did hurt his career, but he's not a good guy, and not award him any money.
Right. She not only hurt his career, she ended his career. If he loses this case, this trial, his career is over. Is it not?
He is, though, signed up for another movie in France. He is signed up to play the part of a French king. I forget which one.
But I think they're minimal roles. I don't think that, his agent once called him, the most famous actor in the world. And she was questioned about that, in fact, today. He was a big name, and he's always going to be a big name. The question is, will he ever play a big part? And that's why the defamation lawsuit is so important, because if he wins, that means he goes on to play future roles, such as a Jack Sparrow, which was just filled by a female, which I think is really interesting. But, he's Johnny Depp. And I think a lot of fans want to see him up there. They want to see him on the big screen. So it's unfortunate that she is now fighting the system. She is fighting the system of the celebrity male, the Hollywood, let's embrace the Hollywood celeb and give him preferential treatment when she's a woman that alleges abuse. And it would be unfortunate if she is telling the truth and she loses.
I think they both come out of this, and eventually they'll both be fine, and he'll get back into movies. She'll get back to being, in Aquaman and all these other films, because people want to see them. They actually both. I don't think
he's not a Harvey Weinstein, okay? But he definitely has a reputation for being a bit of a monster on the set, being aggressive. So does Tom Cruise for yelling at his crew. You know what I mean? But he's never been accused of hitting somebody. There are plenty of celebrities out there, Hollywood celebs, that have tempers. Why? Because, well, number one, their egos are bigger than, than they can possibly put into words. And they like to abuse people because they expect everybody is beneath them. And so that is unfortunately part of the business.
Mel Gibson, Robert Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
All these people have made comebacks from terrible points in their careers.
That's true. Robert Downey Jr. is actually a great example.
Right. And he will too.
But also, one thing that his agent said today, or his former agent, when questioned as to why his entire career just tanked, she said it doesn't help that he sued everybody around him. And so I don't think this lawsuit is going to help him even if he wins.
Yeah, no, that's the other question, is that she did. First of all, everybody that was on his side as a former employer, they were all fired. So every single person that actually had to talk about his demeanor and his professionalism or lack thereof in the years past, they were all terminated by him. So there is a little bit of a record there. That doesn't necessarily help him. But it doesn't necessarily claim defamation, or does it?
I think ultimately he'll be fine. And I have to say something for purposes of full disclosure. I did meet him once, and I was on the set of the filming of Donnie Brasco.
Full disclosure, I had a major crush on him for like, I don't know,
I did not have that,
years.
but I did meet him.
No.
And I got an autographed picture
I wasn't
from
really
him.
a fan of the eyeliner, but I'm like, I'll give him a pass. He's Johnny Depp. I would go on a date
I
with
think
him if I had to.
this has actually brought him back into the public eye. So I think he will have another role, and she'll be fine too.
How about if she goes to, what if he goes to therapy for anger management? Does that get him any kind of forgiveness?
Mel Gibson has made great movies, right? And so while his acting career is not the same, he's still in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think that's sad, though, that if everybody comes out of this totally fine, they go back to making movies, why is the state of Virginia having to pay for this? That is crazy.
I know. It's actually very crazy that taxpayers are actually having to pay. And the fact that it's televised makes it much more of a circus as well. But I mean, I'm not really sure where this ends. But we still have over a week to go. So what is next? I mean, so we've heard testimony from the sister. I believe that is going to be the only witness that they have. If they had any other witnesses that have actually physically seen the violence happen, don't you think they would have testified by now? Don't you think that their best witnesses? Known about it. Yeah, their best witnesses. We've heard from their best witnesses at this point.
We do expect to see Ellen Barkin on the stand, though, which will be fascinating. Ellen Barkin formerly dated Depp, and she at least testified in the London libel trial that he threw a wine bottle at her. So that will go to his character. Also, most interesting that everyone is waiting for is for Johnny Depp to be called back to the stand as Amber's witness.
Yeah, and that would be interesting. Now, if you were to have to question him, cross-examine him, okay, as, let's say, Amber Heard's attorney, and you get Johnny Depp on the stand. Now, you've just heard all this testimony about, his drinking, his drugs, his temper, all of that, but then you get the witness of a former girlfriend who has had a bottle thrown at her. What do you ask Johnny Depp?
I'm not doing that if I'm her lawyer. So that would be a terrible mistake.
You think it would?
Because they've looked bad in cross-examining him already. So what more are they going to get? It's just going to reimburse the notion.
He's just going to deny it. Yeah, so then they get nowhere.
It doesn't help. It won't help them. So the question of what they should have done and how they should have done it is really trial advocacy 101, right? A lot of what they did was just bad, and allow him to dominate them as opposed to controlling the witness. You have to control your witness.
Right.
He controlled them. And so she's at a disadvantage there. Now, ultimately, will it matter? We'll see.
Don't a lot of prosecutors actually advise their clients not to take the stand because they could...
Well, he's a civil case. He has to.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. But in a criminal case, they tend to advise their clients not to take the stand because they could potentially hurt themselves.
So that's generally the way that most defense attorneys do. Right. I can tell you that in most of my cases, my clients, we go to trial. My clients have taken the stand, and the one they do, you
prep them, though, right?
Yeah, of course. We have to. That's their right. And so if a prosecutor goes down that line of asking, "Hey, were you prepped? You met with Mr. Varghese and prepped?" I what we call vaccinate the jury to that line of questioning by asking every witness for the government, hey, you met with the prosecutor in preparation for this thing, right? Yes, I did. In fact, you as an FBI agent are given training on how to testify.
But something tells me that nobody is going to train Johnny Depp on how to answer questions on the bench there, because I mean, he is Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp does what Johnny Depp wants, and that is it.
I would agree with that.
I don't believe that anybody is going to tell him what to say or do. So, as the prosecutor, I would say having him up there on the stand and being questioned has been excellent for him. If I wanted to have, if I was a prosecutor in this case, and if you were a prosecutor in this case, you would want Johnny Depp up there again, would you not?
I mean,
I think it's worked for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, it's worked because I think that there's been too much comedy. And so when you have too much comedy...
It's a distraction, Angela, but that's also not fair either for Amber, because, I mean, there was one case in which a guy actually had to walk out of the courtroom. He was laughing so hysterically. I was watching that this morning, and everybody in the audience, all the spectators were looking over at him because he was just burying his face in his hands because he was laughing so hard. He looked like he was almost about to cry. He was laughing that hard. So it is unfortunate for Amber.
Yes, it almost seems like an impossible quest for her to go against a man who is, again, one of the greatest movie stars in the world with all this charisma and humor. I mean, it's impossible.
Well, she could have settled, right? She didn't have to go to trial. I mean, if that's true, they could have put it together and settled something with a non-disclosure agreement to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, but the reason why, but here's why he didn't want a settlement, and I believe the reason why he would not have wanted that settlement is because he wants to clear his name. He wants to clear his name. He wants to win this defamation lawsuit to show that she wrongly defamed him. In other words, that he was not guilty of the things that she has accused him of, and therefore he should be able to continue to work in his line of work and be considered an innocent man and clear his name. That's why she didn't.
He's relevant again.
Yeah, he is. I mean, in the end, yeah. I mean, this has made him relevant. Everybody's watching this every single day.
I also think many people have testified to his just love for revenge. And I think also part of his motivation is not just to clear his own name, but also to drag Amber's down, which clearly he's been doing.
I know. It'll be interesting to see her future roles as well. By the way, if you're just tuning in, so we are currently in a lunch recess with the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial. So we've been sort of talking about it until they come back. The judge had said when they broke that they'd be coming back at about 1:45. That's Eastern time. So that's in about 1 minute from now. So as we wait for everybody to re-enter the courtroom, what do you expect to see for the rest of the day, Angela?
I expect to see more testimony from people on his camp about why his character is questionable. I also think Adam Waldman's testimony, who is his current lawyer, started to make headway on the counterclaim.
Yeah.
And I expect to see more of that this afternoon.
What did you think of Waldman's testimony, by the way? I mean, I almost felt like it was pointless because there's attorney-client privilege there. With every single question, it was, you know, no attorney-client privilege or attorney-client communication or work product. I mean, there was really nothing you could get out of him. He's currently representing him. And he hasn't waived his attorney-client privilege.
It was, and we talked about this backstage. I was like,
it's a waste.
Is going on?
What the hell? Why is he up there?
And it's just, it made no sense.
But why would they call him? That's what I'm saying.
They were hoping he would trip up and give something out.
I know, but that's stupid.
Yeah,
I think that's messy lawyer work. I think that's messy defense work.
Her lawyers have been very messy.
Because her questions were so ridiculous, and I'm not even a lawyer, but I do have great knowledge of the law, and I've covered many, many legal cases. Her questions, by reiterating each question after he objected and he agreed to the instruction, every time rewording it, changing a couple words. I mean, come on.
That's what lawyers do.
I understand, but it was so blatantly obvious, even to a regular civilian like myself. This is stupid, and it's making you look stupid, and it's, once again, it's damaging to Amber Heard.
But I do think they established what they meant to establish.
Which was what? What do you think they established?
Which was simply that he was the spokesperson for Johnny Depp.
To the media.
Yes, to the media when he claimed that it was a hoax and that the sexual allegations were false. So all they needed to do was establish that single link. Like, the objections caused a lot of choppiness in the movement. So that was bad. But they proved what they needed to prove.
I know, but what does that prove? Okay, great. So then they proved that, yeah, he had communication with the media. But that's his whole point. I have a lawyer. Okay, my lawyer represents me whenever I need to make a statement or a comment or I've got media relations.
Right.
So that is his job. But that's a no-brainer. So as far as I'm concerned, they proved nothing.
Exactly. It was a no-brainer, but they need to establish that link to the jury.
Great. We established
on behalf of Johnny Depp, so that's why she can sue Johnny Depp. So it didn't need to be anything bigger than that.
Right.
Are we ready for the jury?
Okay, it sounds like they have been called back to court. So thank you so much, Angela Cenedella and Vinoo Varghese. Thank you both for coming in. All right, let's continue to watch.